Welcome to this episode of The Good, the Bad and the Odd One Out with your host Mark. Today I'll be talking about Alfred Hitchcock's second to last movie, Frenzy.
I dare say you are wondering why I am floating around London like this. I am on the famous Thames River, investigating a murder. Rivers can be very sinister places, and in my new film, Frenzy, this river, you may say, was the scene of a very horrible murder.
It's a woman!
Another necktie murder.
Of course, one can never be sure where danger lurks. They tell me a dreadful crime was committed right in this building. My investigation next led me to this innocent alley, of which there are hundreds in London. But I don't think we should stay long. Something unpleasant is about to happen. Here is the scene of another horrible murder. This is the famous London wholesale fruit and vegetable market, Covent Garden. Here you may buy the fruits of evil and the horrors of vegetables. I've heard of a leg of lamb, a leg of chicken, but never a leg of potatoes.
What's wrong?
Look, she's wearing my tie. How do you like my tie? How do you like it?
Frenzy was made in 1972. It was Hitchcock's second to last film. He effectively had 50 years in film at this point, and you'd think a lot of directors get tired after, 15 years, and their best work tends to be early. However, this is an exception to that rule. Frenzy is definitely a very good film. There's some aspect of the screenplay, I think, served that. It was written by Anthony Schaeffer, and it was a very good screenplay. It was an interesting screenplay too. The basic story is there's a necktie murderer in London. He rapes women and strangles them with neckties and leaves the necktie on them. And the whole story is about whether one particular character may or may not be this person. I'm trying to decide what level of... This is an old film. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend seeing it and not carrying on. I think I am going to talk about things that may spoil it for some. It's an interesting film. What's good about it is, well, it's a lot of the flourishes from Hitchcock that just make it terrific. It's kind of really quite funny in a very dark way in places, for quite long sequences sometimes. It's also, there's certain scenes in it that are kind of quite uncomfortable to watch. There's a rape scene, for example, that just seems to go on, and it's kind of brutal to watch. It isn't very explicit, but it's kind of hard to watch. But it shows that Hitchcock was really on his game with this. There were some great shots. It starts with a high shot of London and slowly coming in to a crowd and discussing Well, basically they get interrupted by seeing a floating dead woman in the Thames with a necktie around her neck, and it all casts from there. I mean, it's just, there's some excellent direction in this, and the way the scenes are set up, the way you see things from different people's perspectives that sort of help to inform why they believe what they believe, which isn't actually true, but from their point of view, from what they've seen, it would appear true, and you can entirely see their point. For example, there's a bit where an old lead is getting angry in a room behind frosted glass, and you see him moving around quite sort of violently, and there's a bang where he's just banging his fist on the table, but it sounds worse than it is from the other side of the glass. I have to say, this film was brought to my attention by two different podcasts that have talked about it recently, both of which I thoroughly recommend. It was in the Horror Etc. podcast, who are doing this really long series. Well, I've done a few on Hitchcock, but they're covering 5 films per podcast kind of thing. Horror Etc. Definitely recommend that, as a past podcast anyway, but they're doing a particular cut. They've already done a couple on Hitchcock, so they've covered 10 films already. Frenzy was one of them, and it was really interesting to listen to. The other one was Hamicus, who did it first about a month ago. That was a really interesting one to listen to as well. I recommend both those podcasts, and they inspired me to watch this film. Actually, the film though, it's kind of, you're seeing one man whose situation in life is basically life's treating him pretty bad. It's kicking him around. He's getting angrier and angrier, and he's either had anger management issues or it's part of his personality. But there's also a bit, he meets with his ex-wife. They're very friendly, but one of the things was during the divorce, they divorced, and the circumstances given were cruelty. However, it kind of turns out, or he claims, it was because they just wanted a quick divorce, and that was the easiest and fastest way to get it through the courts. So he agreed to it, just so they could. And indeed, when he meets her earlier in the film, they seem perfectly happy to talk to each other. She doesn't seem uncomfortable at all. So that kind of corroborates it from the viewer's point of view, but obviously none of the other characters see this, so it's kind of hard to see. And he does indeed go get cross in a restaurant with her. He doesn't get cross with her; he just gets cross. But that doesn't sort of reflect well on eyewitnesses and so on. Overall, this is a really good film. What's bad is, man, there's nothing really bad. It's not tip-top brilliant. It goes on a bit too long, maybe. Having said that, I wasn't bored and not enjoying it. It took its time to get where it's going for various scenes, but I rather enjoyed it. Odd, it was just an odd film. This is like really unusual for Hitchcock. What is quite breathtaking is the fact he's doing fairly modern things with this. The women are fairly modern. He's doing modern things about London. He's reflecting change in society. And it's an old man at this point. It's kind of impressive that he can take all this on and still produce a film that's so relevant to the time. Although it's hard to see how an old man could really maintain that level of flexibility and aptitude for embracing new things. But it was very impressive. It's an impressive film. I think the one he made after this was called Family Plot, which I have not seen, but I don't think it's one of his lesser films for sure. But Frenzy is a really interesting film. I think it may be close to, it's certainly in my top 5 Hitchcocks, and that's a tough list to crack. There are some brilliant films. I'm not quite sure where it stands. I'm going to think about it a bit more, and I may elevate it. All the acting, all the casting was really good. The incidental characters were interesting. They were odd, but they were pretty interesting. It's kind of weird to see Bernard Cribbins being very foul-mouthed as one of his boss that fires him, constantly calling him rather bad names, bad-mouthing him, which is really against Bernard Cribbins' persona and pretty much everything else. It's kind of interesting to see. Also interesting, it stars Anna Massey, who was also in another really great film that's similar in kind to this, in that it's not a horror film, it's a thriller with psychological overtones, which was Peeping Tom, and which I think was made 10 years earlier than this. It was interesting to see she didn't look that much different, actually. There's some cool stuff in this. It was good to see, odd to see London in the early 70s. It comes across as a really decadent place, but it was kind of funny. Yeah, I recommend this film. I gave it 76 out of 100, which I think may be When I first watched it, I think maybe it was a little low. I think it's probably worth a bit higher than that, maybe even 80 out of 100. Definitely recommended. Okay, bye.
Mr. Hitchcock, what is your definition of happiness?
A clear horizon. Nothing to worry about on your plate. Only things that are creative and not destructive. I think that's within yourself. Within me, I can't bear quarreling. I can't bear feelings between people. I think hatred is wasted energy. And it's all non-productive. Some very sensitive. A sharp word said by, say, a person who has a temper, if they're close to me, hurts me for days. I know we're only human. We do go in for these various emotions, call them negative emotions. But when all these are removed, and you can look forward, and the road is clear ahead, and now you're going to create something, I think that's as happy as I would ever want to be.